Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. My name is Nick Milkey, and it's Sunday night, and it's 8:30, and it's time to do my favorite thing, which is talk about Star Wars. We have an amazing guest tonight. I'm so thankful that we're going to hopefully get some folks tuning in on the live stream. This is our third week now of live Sunday night shows, live chat, getting some more folks in, getting some eyes on it, hanging out, having a good time. If you haven't gotten a chance to tune in with us live, hopefully you're getting this in your audio feed. It goes up every Monday morning in our same regular place where you find Podcast of the Wills. It hasn't been a big Star Wars news week, and that's good because if it was, I'd have to talk about Star Wars news by myself, and you don't want me to do that. That's not as fun. There's some things going on, some Twitter kind of things, but I don't call that news. I call that Twitter being Twitter, so we don't need to add into that. We will stick with what we like at our show, which is hashtag Spark of Positivity. So we're going to keep things rolling. I am so excited to introduce our guest tonight. Our guest tonight is Brandon Wainerdi. Brandon is from Talking Bay 94. I know a lot of you are already familiar with Brandon's podcast. In fact, I already see in the live chat, Michael is here. And Michael, and we'll talk about this with Brandon in a second, Michael's obsessed with the Jedi Prince novels, which is the most recent episode that Brandon did. And there's so much good stuff. I said to him, just bragging about him to him about his podcast and all the people he's talked to. Brandon has a great show. I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to get him in here so he can tell us more about it and so I can kind of gush about it. So I am so excited to welcome Brandon to Podcast of the Wills tonight. Brandon, what is up?
What is going on? Thank you for having me, Nick. What a blast. What a great way to spend a Sunday night. I appreciate it.
I'm thrilled to have you. It's such a great thing. I've followed you on Twitter for a while. I followed your show for a while. And as I was kind of right around the time that I was working on transitioning the show into this live format, I also saw you had put something out on Twitter that was just kind of like, hey, if anybody has a show and wants me to come talk, I'm game. And I was like, you probably hadn't had time to finish sending that message before I was like, hey, I have a show, come talk and be on my show. But as I said, in my kind of hastily done intro, because I wanted to get you on here to be able to comment about it, I said this to you before we got on the camera or before we got on live. Half of the list of people that you have talked to read like you followed me around as a kid and was like, yep, Indiana Jones people got it. Yep, Star Wars people got it. I can't read the exhaustive list, but I did write down a bunch of names that I just wanted to point out of people that you've talked to. And then I want you to kind of tell us, we'll start out and hear a little bit about your Star Wars story, how you got to Star Wars, but I also kind of want to hear about the formation of Talking Bay 94, which, let me also say, is easily maybe in the top 5 of podcast names. Like the day I discovered your podcast, it was one of those like, why didn't I think of that? I'm glad I didn't because you did first, but it's such a great podcast name, Talking Bay 94, like the perfect mix of pun. You know what it's about if you're a Star Wars fan. It's glorious. I love the name. But you have talked to Garrick Hagan, who was Biggs. Mm-hmm. Alan Dean Foster, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, I think first Star Wars novel, maybe. Timothy Zahn, which is one of my favorite all-time Star Wars novelists. And if I can't, I've listened to that episode twice because I listened to it right when you did it. And then I listened to it earlier this last week. First of all, I just love listening to him talk. I love, hearing him tell stories. And the part that stuck with me that I really had to hear again was right at the end. You asked him, what were some other stories that he wished he could write or would want to write in the Star Wars universe? And one of them was about Boba trying to get from Cloud City to get Han back to the Empire, or back to Jabba, and like running into trouble along the way, because obviously this was a hotly sought after bounty. And then the other one, which when I heard it the first time, it just kind of made my mind, like they say you get wrinkles in your brain when you learn new stuff. Like I felt like my brain just went, oh, there it is. But he talked about an idea of Obi-Wan going to the far other side of the galaxy and making a big ruckus and essentially maybe like staging his death in order to then disappear to Tatooine to watch over Luke. And like, what would that look like? And I was like, that could be the Obi-Wan show. Like, of course we have that coming. And so there's that part of me that's like, I hope somebody heard that. Like, I hope there is. Yeah. But it was just brilliant. He's brilliant. And for me, the original Thrawn trilogy in the 90s was an integral part of my growing up Star Wars life. And so to have, read those books and then to found him even farther. two guys, Gary Whitta and Todd Vaziri. I love these guys on Twitter. They are such great follows on Twitter. They're so personable. They're so positive. They're so happy. Todd is always like picking apart, special effects scenes and videos and, the Texas Switch and all these other things that, of course, and then they've worked on Star Wars. Nick Gillard, who did all the stunt stuff in the prequels, the sword fights and, all of that. Richard Edlund. I mean, this is old trilogy Star Wars royalty where I grew up. You talked to Julian Glover. We talked about this a minute ago. Julian Glover was Veers. Julian Glover was Donovan in Last Crusade. And Julian Glover was also Grand Maester Pycelle in Game of Thrones. Like, talk about the triple threat. And he was so fun to listen to. Speaking of Indy, you talked to Paul Freeman, Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Such a great character, such a fun, somebody. Kevin J. Anderson, Dennis Murin, Steve Sansweet. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago, recently, your most recent episode was Paul Davids, who wrote the Jedi Prince trilogy. And that story reminds me so much of listening to, I think it was Kevin J. Anderson on another show, kind of essentially talking about what the Wild West was of the EU novels back when that was all happening in the 90s. Like, there wasn't a lot of organization. There wasn't a story group. It was just like, this guy wrote some books and hey, go with this. And like, how did those parts, make it into novels? Of course, they're not all canon anymore, but those little bits get, pulled out of them. We see that stuff surface. So I've done too much talking for this intro. You have an amazing list of people you talk to, and that's just like a fourth of it. There's so many other people. So if y'all aren't listening to Talking Bay 94, what are you doing? What are you doing? Go subscribe right now and then come back. But tell us about your Star Wars story a little bit, and then tell us about, kind of putting the show together and what got you, doing what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up at the perfect age to see the special editions in the movie theater, which is really just, I still am just blown away that I was able to see A New Hope on a big screen and then be like freaking out. And then a month later go see Empire Strikes Back, right, on the big screen for the first time. And then see Return of the Jedi a month later. And then, of course, the prequels came 2 years later, and I was able to carry that all the way through middle school and high school. And then the Disney trilogy came right when I was graduating grad school. And so, like, it has always kind of been a part of my life and of kind of like who I am. I'm just sure like you and everyone listening, I've always been the Star Wars guy, right? In any friend group or anything like that. So, it's just who you are, and it's just like what you do. And so with Talking Bay 94 specifically, it was during The Last Jedi, and me coming out of that movie just like kind of blown away. And, after all this time being a Star Wars fan, really like rethinking a lot of things and like being super pumped about like where Star Wars was going. And I was like, I wonder if there are Star Wars podcasts. And I remember, 10 years before listening to different shows, and then kind of dropping out right when podcasts were really starting. And then, so I just did a little deep dive and I found Blast Points. And they had a great episode that was on the AV Club, all about like the different sound mixes of the original Star Wars movie, like the most benign, like random topic for a Star Wars thing. And I was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And so I listened to like 40 Blast Points episodes. They've heard me tell the story 100 times now. Listened to like 40 Blast Points episodes and like freaked out. I was like, this is super cool. So I texted my buddy, who's the producer of Talking Bay 94, and I was like, I want to do a Star Wars show. We should do a Star Wars show. And so we spent like a month concepting and coming up with the name and figuring it all out. And really my goal was to find a niche that wasn't really being done. And 3 years ago, there was no show that was like Mark Maron or Nerdist was really big back then, doing one-on-one interviews with only people that worked officially on Star Wars, cast and crew and creators of Star Wars. And just kind of went from there, and it's been a fun ride ever since. Really,
it's such a good show, and it's such a good concept. And I said to you also before we went live, part of why your show speaks to me so much is I always say I'm a sucker for process. I love how does something get done? How is it made? You mentioned Nerdist. I listened to Nerdist for years because it was that longer form conversation of, a lot of times it was an actor or somebody that I liked, but it was also people who made things. It's not just the actors. Like, I want to hear the stories about how did you get to this point? What was going on? You know, I'll watch my wife and I both love documentaries, and I mean, a well-made documentary can literally, and we've about proven this with the amount of documentaries we've watched, can be about anything, and it can be good. We have watched documentaries on topics that my wife's like, I don't care about this, but it's so good. Like, you know, she's nominally a sports person, but we watched all 10 episodes of the Bulls documentary last summer, like everybody else did.
So good. Yeah.
We just watched the Tiger Woods documentary on HBO Max, you know, and there's a degree of pop culture in some of those because she grew up, you know, her mom was a Bulls fan when she was growing up. And so like, it was a connecting point for that. But we've watched Hero Dreams of Sushi that came out a couple years ago.
So good. So good.
It's phenomenal. And it's about a sushi store or restaurant in a train station in Japan. Like, it shouldn't be that good, but it's so good when it's so well done. And of course, we like the crazy culty ones, and we like, you know, a little bit of everything. I have a buddy, shout out to my friend Rayleigh, who's not listening to this. We kind of thrive in the weird documentary era as well. Like, what is the weirdest documentaries you can find about things that are just crazy and out there? And this is my plug, and I have nothing to do with this, but I've watched it multiple times. There's a documentary, you can find the whole thing on YouTube, called The Rockefeller Explosion.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And it's so good. It's about Showbiz Pizza and the animatronic band and the whole deal. What makes it even better is that guy that's featured in that documentary is from Alabama and is like an hour away from where I live. And so there's a part of me that's like, I need to go find that dude and just talk to him about his obsession with showbiz. It's so weird. It's so good. So he'll constantly send me links. He's like, you need to go watch this one. You need to go watch that. It's like what's the one? The Whites of West Virginia, the Dancing Outlaw. Yeah, that one's weird. You need to look that up. But so your show, to get us back on point, is all about these kinds of people, the people who make Star Wars, the people who were involved in Star Wars. You talked to Laurie Good, which was a great episode. You've talked to, again, Dennis Murin. I mean, these are the special effects. You've talked to people who have been, you know, more recently you talked to Misty Rosas, and you talked to Emily Swallow, the armorer, like Mando stuff that we're going on right now. And these are the people that were there, and I love hearing those stories. I love, you know, it somehow makes me feel connected to something I love so much even more. And so that's what's great about your show. That's why people absolutely should be subscribed and listening and being a part of the Talking Bay 94 Army, as I'm going to declare it right now. But that also brings me to our topic for the night. And as I started this new version of the live show, I really wanted to go, as you mentioned, when you asked the question, are there other Star Wars podcasts? Now I think the current count is like 89,372. There's nothing that I can do on this show that hasn't been done already, but lists are fun. Countdowns are fun. And what I decided was, if I can, tailor them to my guests, find some, you know, what do they love? What, you know, put a little bit of a spin on it. And so as you put in your biography, as I said already, you said you're a huge special features dork. Behind the scenes stuff is right up that alley. So what I have got for us tonight, and I'm so thankful that you were game to go for it and be a part of it, is we're going to talk about your top 7 behind the scenes moments in Star Wars. I will make a small apology both to you and anybody that's watching live. If I had been a little more on top of my game, I would have gotten some of the information from you soon enough to like put some visuals up on screen. But what I'm going to do is, you did send me a really awesome outline that has some YouTube clips and that kind of stuff. I'm going to put all those in the show notes with the numbers by them, so that if anybody wants to come and follow up afterwards and check out those clips, I definitely want them to be able to do that. But other than that, I mean, let's jump in. We'll start at number 7. What is your number 7 behind the scenes Star Wars moment?
So what I did to preface this, because I can't, you were like, pick this, and I was like, okay, I can't choose a favorite, because that would be like stabbing me in the heart, right? I can't do it. So what I did, so I went chronological. I copped out a little bit chronologically, but hopefully it tells a larger story about Star Wars. So at number 7, the furthest away from us, 40 years, is there's incredible photos, and I'm sure you've probably seen them, but the story behind it is also just so much fun, of the Muppets.
And let me interrupt you too. And that's what I want in this, is I want the stories. Like, I don't want you to say number 7 is this. Like, we want the story, that you've got the stories, and that's what everybody is definitely here to hear.
So number 7 is when the Muppets visited the set of The Empire Strikes Back. They visited Dagobah, and it was great because, of course, Frank Oz puppeting Yoda and also puppeting Miss Piggy. And since the Muppet Show was being filmed in London, same time as the original trilogy, it was pretty easy for Jim Henson and the gang to just kind of pop over Telstra Studio when it was happening. So there's just like incredible photos of Kermit, Miss Piggy, Yoda, Mark Hamill just hanging out on Dagobah, and it's the best. It is literally the best. There's really like no better like thing that could have possibly happened during the filming of all that stuff, which was hellacious for Mark Hamill, especially, right? He spent 2 months being the only like human on the call sheet, right? Yes. Just like with snakes and with puppets, and with R2D2, I guess. And anyway, incredible stuff. Just my favorite photos of all time, and I'm just so glad that they decided to like go hang out. And really, now I'm very excited because the Muppet Show is coming to Disney Plus in 2 weeks, something like that, week and a half, and that's gonna be the best because I've only seen, I mean, as someone that, born in 1992, I've only seen the episodes that were available to me on VHS, and then there was like DVD compilations. So I haven't seen them all, and I'm very excited to just dive in now and like just like watch it nonstop. And I feel like I'll just kind of, it'll be my like cleaning around the house kind of show, and just like always have it on. It's going to be great,
without a doubt. And you're right. The pictures of that we have seen over the years are, just looking at them, it makes you happy, and it's joyful. Which the Muppets are anyhow. There's so much fun in the Muppets. I remember growing up not only with the Muppets and Fraggle Rock, right. And again, all these Jim Henson creations, Frank Oz, all the connections. And I love what you said too about Mark Hamill, kind of being trapped on that set because like Frank Oz was there, but he was under that wooden stage that they had to build in order to, so like, it's not like they could talk really and hang out. Like he was isolated and separated. And so to get that, fun visit from the Muppets, certainly had to have brought some sort of levity to just, being stuck in a swampy, weird set for that period of time.
Yeah, definitely.
That is an excellent number 7. That is an excellent jumping off point. And I'm making notes as we go so that as I come back in and plug in links, I know you've got links for a lot of the YouTube videos and places for people to check all these out. So if I look off to the side, it's because I'm writing down these amazing choices.
All good. I'm gonna put the link to number 6 in the chat right now, so people can see it on silent. Because this is also this is not number 6. If we want to jump to number 6, and I played a little fast and loose because this is technically Star Wars, but it is not. It's not the filming of a movie. It is the grand opening ribbon cutting celebration of Star Tours at Disneyland with George Lucas, and it is very good. And so I need people to be able to kind of just see it in the background and understand just the enormity of the situation because it's probably a 15-minute video. Right. And I recommend watching it in full after this stream has ended. But you can skip around and you can just kind of see why I'm just so pumped about this. It starts with a skit. It starts with like a bunch of squibs, a bunch of smoke, a bunch of whatever, and it's like Luke, Han, and Leia, a bunch of actors playing them. Messing around, running around, and like doing pirouettes. It's crazy. And then they cut and they bring a bunch of new actors up who are like X-Wing pilots, the Cantina Band, but also what looks like, because I don't think they ever made reproductions of these, what looks like the actual Jabba Palace alien costumes of like Klaatu, of Mohanik, like it's crazy, like it's everyone is there. And I'm like, okay, cool. And that's going really well. And they do a little dance. And then Michael Eisner and George Lucas come out, which is also could have been top 6 just with that moment. And then C-3PO and R2-D2 come out. Michael Eisner forgets what their names are, which is super good. Watch for that. And then they cut the ribbon with like scissors that are like exploding with firecrackers. And really, it's like the best 15-minute video on YouTube ever. So I highly recommend it to everyone.
It's so good. And I'm sure, and I know which clip you're talking about. I haven't seen it in a long time. But it also has one of my favorite kind of overall non-cinematic Star Wars things, which is the general awkwardness that is George Lucas. Yeah. Most anywhere in public, like if he's in a sit-down interview, he's in a study, he's in something that we've seen in some behind-the-scenes feature or whatever, like he kind of pulls it together a little bit for that. But like if he comes out to like a live panel in the times that he's done, or, if he was on Good Morning America back when the prequels were coming out, like there is something about George Lucas that is kind of all of us, like, where do I look? And, also reminds me a lot of the Saturday Night Live sketch where they do the casting outtakes of the other people for Force Awakens, and he's standing off to the side and he's just like, a Diet Coke, I need a Diet Coke. And it's just so George, and just so he's a little bit socially awkward, which I am too. So I relate to that immediately. But yeah, just same thing. It's just, he's not quite sure where to look. He's there. And again, you say Michael Eisner, and that's another one of those like childhood triggering in a good way moments. Yeah, absolutely. And I was born in 78. And so I grew up with, I think it was the Sunday night Disney family movie that came on, ABC, or, well, I guess it was, ABC. And he came out for years and would introduce hi, I'm Michael Eisner, the president of the Walt Disney Corporation. And, and just like, I shouldn't know this man as well as I do, but like, he's the guy that introduced the movie we all watched. And then it proceeded to be like Apple Dumpling Gang or Bed Knobs and Broomsticks or something else.
Right. And I mean, and if you enjoy theme park nostalgia, which is something that I've kind of really gotten into, especially during quarantine, I really, like you're talking about earlier with documentaries, I really highly recommend 2 YouTube channels that are both like probably the best YouTube channels I've ever seen. There's Defunctland and Yesterworld, and both of them do like 10 to 15 minute mini documentaries about different theme park rides or kind of like the creation of Disneyland, Disney World, whatever it is. And it's like fantastic. Like Defunctland did like also like a Jim Henson biography, like 6-part miniseries that's like should have been nominated for an Emmy. Like, it's crazy stuff. Highly recommend it. Like, probably the greatest content creators on YouTube, period. So if you're anywhere interested in any of it, I would recommend digging through their library because there's some really fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I know what's going to keep me up late at night for the next 2 weeks.
You're going to love it.
Thanks a lot. But it's going to go well because as a collector of all things Star Wars, especially vintage Star Wars things, I have spent a lot of time in the last month because I saw, now I don't remember who it was, but somebody had put up, they had a print, like one of the original Star Tours prints around the time that Star Tours opened. And so now I'm on eBay all the time looking at like Star Tours merch and all the vintage, just all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's another great. We were talking about documentaries earlier. All the Disney ones, the American Master series about Disney World and Disneyland. The process of how all that got done is just, it's mind blowing. But yeah, that's a excellent number 6. I like that a lot.
Love it. Okay, good. So we're 2 for 2 so far.
We're nailing it. That's right.
Okay, good. I was nervous. Number 5. Again, going chronologically. It's a little bit of a cheat. Again, I'm coming on here breaking a little bit of the rules.
It's
me.
Your show. We're just here. We're here to hear what you do.
All right. Number 5 is the entirety of the beginning, which is the episode 1 documentary that was on the DVD. And of course, everyone's seen it. Everyone loves it. It's been memed 100 times, but it is just so good. Like, it is like we're talking about Muppets becoming my comfort thing on Disney Plus. The beginning is my comfort thing currently. I'll just put it on and I was like, every single little vignette is incredible. And I wanted to call out a few, and I don't know if you've seen it or you have it in your mind, because I have a few that just like I always think about and that I love so much. Number 1, when they were testing Jar Jar, they were like, he could be CG, he could be mocap, he could be a guy in a suit with a CG head, whatever, or he could be a puppet. And there's the scene in the beginning of them in the back of a truck bed, driving down the road of Skywalker Ranch, like bouncing a puppet Jar Jar up and down. And I'm like, this is the best. And if like Regal Robot, Tom Spina, if they ever they're like, hey, we made like a prop size, full size replica of the puppet that you're
totally buying 1 of those
in the beginning, and it's $1,000. I'll be like, yeah, it's fine. Just ship it directly to me, and then I'll just kind of have a Jar Jar to bounce up and down. It'll be great.
Totally worth it.
Any Rick McCallum moment, so that's cheating. So Rick McCallum moment, I love, and I didn't realize, because again, I was 8 years old when the DVD came out, and so I'm watching all this. It's incredible. And at the very end of that documentary, I love it still, and he's in front of the huge crowd opening night of Phantom Menace, right? They all have their lightsabers and they're going wild, right? And he goes out and he goes, "This is awesome." And I didn't realize for 10 years that they were bleeping the F word out, right? I never realized that forever.
Absolutely. I know. That's right. I know our friend Jerry, the Canon Junkie, is in the chat, or it was a minute ago, and Jerry and Scotty at the Bombag Cast are dedicated Rick McCallum stands, and this is right up their alley. So anything Rick McCallum, like Rick McCallum is a mood, as the kids would say.
Rick McCallum is a mood, big mood. The other, a little more understated, but it made me excited. I was just watching it actually a couple days ago, and it made me even more excited for the Kenobi series, like you were talking about earlier. There's a scene of Ewan picking out his lightsaber, and he's like so pumped, and he's like, which one is it going to be? I've been dreaming of this. Like I've been waiting every day. I keep asking, like, is this going to be the day? And it's just so pure and it's so cool that he was so pumped right then, because like, of course, his uncle is Dennis Lawson, who played Wedge. And he grew up with Star Wars, and like being a part of it really was exciting for him, and is obviously still very exciting for him to be able to come back. And so I really love that moment as well. So the entire beginning, but those three specifically called out.
Absolutely. And isn't it, because you brought it up, especially that those are all excellent pulls from that documentary, but Ewan McGregor's excitement like gives me life in a way that being excited for this Obi-Wan series, being excited for I have no idea what they're going to do. I don't have any inside sources. Right. We don't do that on this show. I have no idea. Right. I don't care. I'm glad we're getting it. And for somebody who grew up with the original trilogy, I got the prequels when I was in college, and I'm one of those very typical people my age who has been meh about the prequels for a long time. And then several years ago, when I grew up and kind of stopped being an a-hole, I was like, you know what? It's Star Wars. I shouldn't complain. I don't get to complain about it. Like I love it. I do love the prequels more than I did then. But my favorite part, even then, when I wasn't sure about it, was Ewan McGregor. Ewan McGregor in the prequels is what makes the prequels for me. To go back and visit that character through, the Clone Wars, to get that era. Obviously, that's not Ewan McGregor, but that era of Obi-Wan. Like I'm not a cosplayer. I don't have the resources to go get my own Stormtrooper armor. Although one day, like you said, a Novos Regal robot, I hear you. One day you're just going to get my bank account number.
Right.
But there have been times when I've looked at that Clone Wars era General Kenobi and I'm going, I could pull that off. Like I have a beard.
Yeah.
It's I either have to wear a mask because Han Solo didn't have a beard, so I can't be Han Solo. But I could pull off like a Clone Wars era Obi-Wan and that armor and that outfit. And so, to get Ewan in the Obi-Wan show coming up and to see those little moments, I love. I don't know if you watched the Long Way Up, the Ewan McGregor motorcycle.
So good,
so freaking good. I've watched all three of them, and again, like there are little mentions along the way. And as he was doing promo stuff for this newest one, people had chances to ask him about, and you're also about to. And he's giddy to be getting back to Obi-Wan, and so just like you're saying with that part in that documentary, giddy to pick out a lightsaber, like that's the thing that every kid wants to do. And he grew up, like you said, Dennis Lawson is his uncle, and he grew up in that era of Star Wars that he could totally be excited about it. Like if somebody called me tomorrow and was like, hey, we're making episode 10 and we want you to be on it, I'd first have to poop my pants and then clean up. Right. But like that was Ewan McGregor. Like he got to be that guy and got to be that, person. So the giddiness of Ewan McGregor always wins in any category for sure.
Always wins. We'll go now.
Yes, please.
Part of it is not Ewan McGregor, which makes it even better, which is episode 3. Now, I don't have video for it because they're very hard to find. Actually, a listener of mine sent me a Dropbox with just every screenshot of it. And I don't know if you remember, but for episode 3, for Revenge of the Sith, Pablo Hidalgo was one of his first, he had a bunch of jobs before that, but one of his first, really public-facing jobs for Lucasfilm was being the keeper of the hyperspace webcam for episode 3. They flew him out to Australia to the set of episode 3, and they were just like, put it wherever, and we'll put it on the website for the members. And every 15 seconds will be a new photo. And that's it. And it was just like the most benign. It was like, here's a set being built. And it was like people like hammering for like 4 hours. And I was 12 and I would be like, Mom, I need $40. I have to be a hyperspace member. And I have to sit there and I have to watch Shakti getting her makeup applied. Incredible stuff. Really great. Still probably one of my favorite Star Wars things ever, because I can't imagine them ever doing that ever again, right? Like having a webcam on the set, just there. And it really speaks to kind of that openness and that love. And again, the Rick McCallumness of it all, which is like, let's bring the fans in, let's go crazy, let's make them all feel like they're part of the process, which I mean, obviously has paid off in dividends with how I appreciate Star Wars as a fan. But my favorite hyperspace webcam moment, if I have to pick one, and I was able to ask Dave and Lou Elsey very early on in the podcast about it, is they made a mannequin for Ewan McGregor that Hayden could carry over his back at the beginning of episode 3 when he's knocked unconscious. So they made it a life-size mannequin of Ewan McGregor that looked pretty good. They sat next to each other. And so they would just have him sitting in a chair, and he's knocked unconscious, so his eyes are closed and he's kind of sleeping. And they would just like have the webcam on him for hours. And you're like, I guess this is content, #content. Anyway, really cool. Probably one of the best. Yeah.
And I love Pablo. That feels like such a Pablo move to be like, I'm just going to put this camera on this thing, and you may not know, and you may know. And if you're in on the joke, even better. But if not, here's your picture. Come back in 15 minutes. You're going to get the same one, but he moved a little.
Exactly. No, I love it. And because even when talking to Dave and Wellesley about it, they're like, yeah, we would just mess with the webcam. We would like move things around, and we would try to like mess with the people watching. I was like, this is so great, because that's what I was like looking for. And like, if you type it in, there's really not a lot anymore, but there are the people that are like, here is your first look at episode 3. It's like the old leakers that are like, here is and it's like a shot of like the corner of a Star Destroyer, and everyone's like, what does this mean? And you're like, okay, everyone calm down, but really cool. Like really, really, really
gosh. Can you imagine if they had something like that now with the internet and with every single instant reaction YouTube show? Like,
oh my gosh.
We would either, none of us would get sleep, or there would be 3 times as many shows as there are now. And it's like, incoming picture, new picture, like picking it up. Like, we've done podcasts on our show where we picked apart like the Force Awakens trailer that was maybe 2 minutes, and we went over an hour and 45 minutes talking about that. The last thing on earth we would need is every 15 minutes a picture for somebody to freak out about or lose their mind. Like, I'm glad they don't have that for all of our sake.
Right.
It would be overwhelming.
It would be the worst, because I would just not have a job. Like, it was nice because, again, I was 12, and so I didn't have to do anything all day. But now that I have a job, I would just get fired, which is cool. So I'm glad Pablo's not doing that just for my personal sake.
That's right. Maybe we'll start a new petition for him to bring back, but now it'll be like the Pablo cam.
Right. Well, and then and everyone would take it very seriously, and there we go.
It would be a whole other thing.
Yeah, you'd be like, no, screw. No.
Yeah,
no,
he's already had a tough road here with some of these people.
Yeah, no, he doesn't need any more public facing things for
Agreed.
Protect Pablo at all costs.
Agreed.
Number, what is this? What are we on? 3?
Number 3. Yes.
Number 3. Look, I'm just powering through. It's like,
that's right. That's good.
I'm going to go to sleep at like 9 o'clock. No. Number 3. We're going to jump to the sequels. We're going to skip 20 years. We're going to jump to the sequels, which is, there's a photo that's very iconic. If we're talking about iconic behind the scenes moments, and it's of all of them at the table read together for Force Awakens. And it's like the first time all of them are there. And I remember when they released that photo, everyone was like, wow, what the hell is going on? Like, this is crazy. And I was trying to guess based on like seating position, who everyone was. They're like, okay, Daisy Ridley is sitting next to Carrie Fisher, which must mean that she is Han and Leia's daughter. It was like crazy stuff. And I love it. And they released a little snippet on, I think it was the original Force Awakens Blu-ray, because then there was more bonus features when they released the 3D version. But in it, they revealed, because the joke for a long time after the movie came out was that Mark Hamill was there. He's in the photo, and everyone's like, oh, cool, like Luke Skywalker's back. Of course, it makes sense. It's cool. But then if you think about it, you're like, what did Mark Hamill do for 2.5 hours while they read this script, right? Until the very, what did he, what was it? And they revealed in the little snippet I put in the chat, that he was doing all the dialogue, all the stage direction, which is incredible, because he starts off, he's like, a long time ago in Galaxy Far, Far Away, and reads the crawl. You're like, this is the coolest thing ever. This is so, like, it's just like tying everyone together. And really, even as the movies were filmed and as the sequel trilogy progressed, I really don't think that all of them were in that room like that together, and kind of signifying the start of Disney Star Wars in that way. Really, is kind of like iconic in its own right, and then super cool to kind of think that they were able to capture that and really make that happen. So,
absolutely, it's so cool. And I remember when that image dropped. That was what, 2015? Was that 15? When did Force Awakens come out?
2015. Yeah.
So before that, whenever that image dropped, we were at a point, technologically speaking, that like it should have been available high res, like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe it's just the internet in Alabama, the way my phone works. I don't know, but it wasn't like all I could get of that image initially. And I'm sure it was like Twitter or whatever. It's like when you blew it up, it was kind of grainy. And so, like you said, like I wanted to examine this picture in full, and I love it now, and I can even picture it in my mind. Wasn't the first one black and white?
Mm-hmm.
It was that black and white shot. There were the crates, you know, kind of just staged around, which also felt like a little bit of an episode of Rebels. Like they just set some chairs up before they went and moved some crates around for Rebels. But like you said, they were staged in the way they were all seated. And I was like, I know who that is. I'm not sure who that guy is. And, you know, you saw Oscar Isaac in that, and you're like, okay, this guy. And who, like you said, I was thinking about who's sitting where and who's whatever. And it didn't occur to me about Mark Hamill and sitting there the whole time until, I mean, when I saw the movie and I kept, you know, like everybody else, where's Luke? Where's Luke? Where's Luke? And we get the last, you know, closing scene. And even then it didn't occur to me because, of course, I had other things I was trying to pick apart and process about this movie I had just seen, most specifically the death of Han Solo. Spoiler alert, if you didn't know that, what are you doing here? But then, like you said, eventually, as the word came out in the documentary, it may have even been. Did they do a documentary for Force Awakens? They did.
There's many documentaries.
Lots of them.
And then there's an audio. JJ finally did an audio commentary as well for the 3D.
But whenever whenever the word dropped that, you know, Mark did all the stage directions and kind of was the narrator through the whole thing. Then, of course, you know, there's a part of me that's like, oh, good. Like they gave him something to do. Like I felt good for him. Not that he needed that for me, certainly. But yeah, that's such an iconic, you know, to me, modern iconic part of just what we've gotten out of these sequel movies. And, you know, for like it or love it, for me as an OT kid, to see all of those people sitting on that stage, to see, you know, Carrie was there and Harrison was there, and they were all like, I'm sure those new people are great, but like these are the people that I'm interested in. They're all here.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, it's very interesting to think because again, Force Awakens is the only Star Wars movie that doesn't have like a feature length documentary attached to it, which is anyway, because there's so much surrounding it in terms of the behind the scenes drama, Harrison getting injured, all this stuff.
Sure.
So it is really nice to see kind of like the fun, good little parts. And so
no doubt. Well, and all of the documentaries, like anything else, you know, it's probably not safe to say out loud how many times I've watched The Director and the Jedi. Because,
oh my God.
You know, give me a full length, you know, movie about the movie of how they made the movie that just, you know, any of those I'm going to just consume wholeheartedly.
I'm glad you brought up Director and the Jedi because I was trying to be a good boy and keep within the 7 and just kind of
we're out in wild space here.
Because Director and the Jedi is probably like the greatest behind the scenes content that has come out of Disney Star Wars period, just because of how like unfiltered it is. And that's a really testament. Like I say special features nerd in my bio, because it feels like Rian Johnson is that ilk as well, cut from that same cloth. And he understands how necessary it is to kind of have that as an element of your movie, as a holistic part of how you present it. Because he grew up with the same kind of DVD bonus features, right? That film school that was part of, you know, the original Star Wars, but also every other DVD that came out in the early 2000s. And so everything Rian has done, whether Star Wars or not, has come just completely full of incredible bonus features, whether it's him putting up the scripts and his set photos on his website, whatever it is. Director of the Jedi, it premiered. I'm in Texas. I'm in Dallas.
Yeah.
It premiered in Austin at South by Southwest. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I drove down to Austin because one of my clients was Twitter at the time. And they're like, hey, FYI, Brandon, because they knew that I like Star Wars, obviously. And they were like, hey, we are doing like this weird after party thing with some Star Wars people. If you were interested, I know that you'll be at South by. So if you wanted to come, we got you I was like, yeah, no, that's cool. Completely normal. And I like played it super cool. And I, with South by, for work, I go the week before, and then I go during the weekend, and I come back to go, and then it's the entire week, but I'm still working. And so I was already back in Dallas, and I was like, I have a decision to make. Do I drive through the night to get there Monday morning, take the day off work for the chance potentially that someone from Last Jedi will be there? And so I wake up, or I wake up at 1 a.m., drive to Austin. I'm the first person in line to get into the Twitter house, they called it, right? Because the after party, quote unquote, was at 10 a.m. or something. So I'm there in line. I have my little Last Jedi novelization with me. I'm reading it, sitting there on the sidewalk in front of a gated whatever. And 9 o'clock, line is forming. People are getting there. It's getting a really long line. And I'm the king of the nerds. I'm at the front of the line. I'm like, this is great. and then they let me in, and I get the front row, first seat right in the middle. And there's a stage, and there's 4 chairs. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then out walks the moderator, number 1 chair, Ram Bergman, producer of The Last Jedi. I'm like, cool. Rian Johnson. I'm like, okay, cool. And then Mark Hamill. And I'm like, cool. This is great.
This turned out to be a really good decision.
So yeah, I'm literally like, as far away from my computer as I am, Mark Hamill and Rian Johnson talking about making Star Wars, right? And it was only like a 20-minute talk, because they, everything is outlined in the movie, so it's pretty much just them promoting. And I was just like, this is the craziest thing I've ever been in my entire life. And I'm just like kind of crying, and like they're kind of making eye contact with me, because that's how you talk, right, when you're on stage. And I'm just like kind of like freaking out. And I'm able to meet Ryan and Ram afterwards, and they sign my book, and I'm just like, and then I have to like drive back and like act normal. So that's my story about Director and the Jedi. In addition to it being like the best behind the scenes documentary that's probably ever been made for a Star Wars movie.
It really is fantastic. And now as we're just talking about it, I'm like, I'm going to be watching that sometime in the next week. Like, it's time.
I might watch that tonight. I'm going to pour myself a glass of whiskey and just kind of like chill out and get ready for the week.
I like your style. I like your style. You're right with me. Excellent. Well, what about number 2? Where are we with number 2?
Number 2, put it in the chat. And this is not Disney Gallery, because I'm not going to link to Disney Plus. But it's the amount of behind-the-scenes content that we've gotten surrounding stagecraft and the volume for The Mandalorian, which I think is super great. And just like such an exciting new addition to Star Wars and technology and how movies are made. And when that first Disney Gallery dropped, I think we were very spoiled to get it once a week for how many weeks that was for all the episodes. And even, the most recent was really, and even the most recent was season 2, just getting that hour and a half, whatever it was, is nice. But that first Disney Gallery of just like every Friday morning, being able to wake up and like learn something new about Star Wars was like the best. like them being able to like drop new Star Wars documentaries every week for, like you're saying, 2 months. That's so cool. And so that always will like kind of like really like mean a lot to me. And then of course learning so much about how they're making these movies or TV shows especially.
And it's so good. Cool. And to get, especially like you said, in that first season, if I can be pouty and a child about things, because on occasion we try to, even as Star Wars fans. My biggest disappointment was that season 2 gallery was not 8 more episodes. It was just the hour and a half. Like, I wanted a whole episode about Ahsoka. I wanted a whole other episode about Boba. I wanted a whole episode, and I'm thankful for what we got, of course. But that first season, the first season of Mando was 8 episodes, and then we got 8 episodes of gallery. Like, we got as many episodes of behind the scenes as the show itself. And of course, you can't recreate all of that, because you don't need another episode about all the new directors. You don't need whatever. But I loved, like you said, every bit of that. And I just ate that up. And as a sucker for a process story, and how did they do that? But the way they broke it down, the way they did all the different categories, of course, my favorite one was the Connections episode. And it's all the Easter eggs, and it's all the, every week, on our podcast, when we were doing weekly episode recaps of that week's episode of Mandalorian, we always do 5 questions. What's your favorite part, least favorite part, pivotal plot point, favorite Easter egg. And then the last one is always like, based on this episode, what do you want to see more about or know more about? And so the favorite Easter egg was, of course, the one that, like this, I could never pick one thing. I was always, here's my favorite, but also there's 5 other things that we need to talk about too.
Right.
And so that connections episode, and that's where we find out that Mark Hamill is the voice of the bartender droid at Mos Eisley. And that's where we, they get more into that really is R5D4, and the paint down the back of it, all those little, the Kowakian monkey, like all those things that I'm going, this is why Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni need to keep doing this, because as everybody says, it's like the two of them sat down with their Star Wars toys and went, we're going to make some shows about this. And we're going to, there's nothing wrong with fan service. I'm here to say that. Like, do it. Keep doing it. Give us the IG-88 statue in the courtyard, in season 2 when they go back into the school. All these things, like, keep coming, keep bringing it to us. And then give me a show that tells me where it is in case I happen to miss it.
Right. Exactly. And I think eventually we will get more from Mando season 2. Like you're saying, Ahsoka, even I think Rosario Dawson just posted yesterday, like a really great time lapse of her getting the makeup applied. I'm like, this is great. Just like more of this, just put it out so I can just like feel like a whole person right now. But then of course with Mando Gallery season 2, they were like every episode breaking it down pretty thoroughly. And then they just kind of skipped over Luke and Mark Hamill. And I'm like, okay, that's going to be a full on documentary for Emmy season, whatever it is, right? Like we're going to get that eventually.
For that. Yeah, so, they have to.
So all that being said, like there's going to be something cool, and we just have to wait for it. So, Star Wars fans are really patient and standing, and so I don't.
The most chill fandom ever.
Yeah, the most chill. No one going crazy.
No issues at all. People. Well, here's what I want to do before we get to number 1, and then we can, and then we may go off track after that. We've got some folks hanging out in the live chat. I'm thankful to everybody that's here in the live chat. If you have a favorite behind the scenes something or a favorite other moment that we haven't talked about yet, go ahead and throw it in the live chat, because after we get done with Brandon's number 1, we can bring some of those up. Hopefully I know about them and I don't look like the bad fan that doesn't know what you're talking about. But I've got Brandon here to cover me, so we're going to be fine.
And then I won't know them, and you'll be like, "Wow, Brandon is like actually a fake fan. Like Brandon does not know."
What are we? We're gonna both mail our fan cards to you if you can stump us with a behind the scenes moment. Right. But yeah, go ahead and put those in the chat. And after we get through his number 1, and as we talk about some other things that I've got rolling in my head, I would love to throw those in there as well. So
I'll send. I'll put it on the line. If someone puts in the chat a behind the scenes moment that I don't know about, or I can't like speak on more than like 1 minute, I will mail you like a little, stickers and pins, like a bunch of BS, but I will mail that to you.
Hey, everybody needs Star Wars BS. It's fine.
So that's
all right. Challenge issue.
Yeah. There it is.
Well, and in the meantime, let's talk about number 1. What do we got?
All right, number 1. I'll put that in the chat for you. Number 1. Again, we're just going chronologically. Not my favorite movie, not my favorite documentary, but maybe one of my favorite moments from a documentary of all time, which is Warwick Davis coming back as Wicket the Ewok for Rise of Skywalker with his son and doing the costume fitting in front of J.J. Abrams. And it is the best. I put the link in. You can watch literally the first 3 seconds of this video and be like, oh, that's why Brandon likes this, because it is the purest Star Wars thing that exists. And it should warm your heart. And again, it goes all the way back to, we were talking earlier about like being negative or critiquing or like you not liking the prequels, whatever it is, but understanding that things aren't necessarily for me or for whoever, whatever. And just appreciating as much of Star Wars as you can while still being, I think it's important to be critical and important to like, whatever. But in a building up kind of way, not necessarily building down. And so me finding the things that I love, like this moment, makes me be like, yes, I'm going to go watch Rise of Skywalker now, because this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, right? Warwick Davis coming back after almost 40 years, putting on the Wicket costume with his son, and Neil Scanlon and J.J. Abrams are just like freaking out, and J.J.'s like trying to direct Wicket the Ewok, and that he had the action figure growing up, right? Like, how cool this is for everyone. And what a good time. So that's my number 1 is Warwick and Harrison. Yeah, so good. So good.
And it reminds me of, to a degree, it wasn't behind the scenes footage. It was kind of, I'm forgetting what it was produced for, maybe for the Emmys. I mean, the Oscars. But that little short that we see from the early 80s where Wicket's going room to room and
I'll
like
tell you. Yeah.
knocking on. Yeah. Like that's what
I
it
love
makes
it.
me think of, is that same thing. Like, cause that's young Warwick Davis. Like that's
Right.
him, as a kid. And the story, of course, of how he got involved in Return of the Jedi. And it like is so great. And of course, he's so great. He's such a great ambassador for Star Wars,
Yeah.
And to have all of that. So when you're talking about that, that's what I'm seeing in my head is, little Warwick Davis in those, behind the scenes or whatever that was from. What was that again?
So okay. It was one of the, we talked about hyperspace a little bit earlier. And so this is good to tie it all a bit back. Hyperspace one day out of nowhere drops. They're like, hey, FYI, we found this fan film that was made in 1982 by a young Warwick Davis while he was on the set. And it's been shown in bits and pieces, but here it is in full or in relative full or the pieces that we have. And I was like pandemonium. Everyone was like, whoa, like, what is it called? It's called Return of the Ewok. And like you said, it's Warwick as a 12-year-old going room to room, knocking on Carrie Fisher's door, trying to figure out where he should go. And it's so good. And it's so cool. It's like Wicket walking through Jabba's palace, Carrie Fisher opening it up and she's in the Jabba's palace costume. Crazy stuff. Highly recommend you trying to seek it out if you can find it. But again, it shows how much of a fan he was, right? And of course, there's that letter, and he loves talking about it, that he wrote to George Lucas after the filming had wrapped, where he was like, hey, Mr. Lucas, I don't know if you remember me. My name's Warwick. If you could send me any action figures of me as Wicket, I would love that. And it's just like, 40 years later, here he is in the last Star Wars saga movie. And then they're bringing him back for Willow. And I think, all of that, it's just so cool. And again, like you said, he's such a great ambassador. And seeing him at Celebration a year ago, 2 years ago, driving around on his little Segway and seeing the panels was like, I was like freaking out. I was like seeing, Harrison Ford, but it was like Warwick Davis speeding off on a Segway. It was great.
Exactly. And I love too that, the connecting points for him, coming forward from Return of the Jedi and the other things that he's gotten to do, to be in Solo, to be in, all the different ways that he's gotten to stay plugged into this trilogy and then to bring it full circle in Rise of Skywalker, like you said, as Wicket and Wicket Jr. or whatever. I'm sure there's a canon actual name.
Yeah, I don't know.
That I don't know.
Again, fake fans. We don't know anything. Yeah.
That's right. What are we even doing here? We're just pretending. Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the chat. We've got a couple of things.
Do we have some? Let's see. Okay, I haven't looked. So you say them, and then if I act shocked, you
that's
win.
Right. I'm just going to bring them up, and we'll let you comment on them. Another Brandon. We've got Brandon Medley. I love watching George Lucas on prequel documentaries with his check marks. I especially like when he's picking out Dexter Jettster.
Oh, the best. Okay, so that I believe is from Pixels to Puppets or Puppets to Pixels, which is the episode 2 features like documentary, which is great and highly recommended again. And what you're bringing up, Brandon, makes me all I want, because Tom Spina and Regal Robot are doing an incredible job. And I actually have one of their maquettes over here for Jabba, which is from Classic Creatures. But of course, Tom, growing up when he did, is a big original trilogy fan. And all I want from Tom and his team, they're listening, maybe he can hear this. I want something from the prequels. Like you said, like the maquettes and like all that stuff. But because like how they sculpted it in clay is still very like implanted in my mind, right? Where they wouldn't finish it. It was very just kind of like, here's the brown clay of Dexter Jettster with his, stubble or whatever it is, or Ton Wee or whatever. And if they made that, and again, like we said earlier, it's like, here, $1,000, I'd be like, sure, here you go. And then I'd explain to my fiance that yes, I bought a bust of Dexter Jettster, but not even Dexter Jettster, like of a concept maquette of Dexter Jettster.
And all the things in, as we're talking about behind the scenes and as we're talking about process and all that, concept art, like that's a whole other world. Like I can get lost in, Ralph McQuarrie and you're talking about that Vader, the maquette, not Vader, the Jabba maquette that you have back there on your bookshelf. I remember, and I'm trying to remember which one, but like those early concept Jabba thing where he had almost like that old Chinese Fu Manchu, like,
a couple of them.
Yes, the fez and the mustache and the whole thing, and like you said, and what stands out to me is like the clay, like seeing those, modeled early, modeled in clay aspects of it just incredibly fascinating. And so, yeah, so that's a good one. Brandon's given us a couple more. We've got Spielberg seeing the battle droids.
Oh, love it. It's like a dangleweed. It's like a dangleweed.
Like
So
a dangleweed.
And I love Spielberg on the set. And Blast Points did a great episode just recently about Indy. They're starting their Indiana Jones year. They did a great episode all about Spielberg and Lucas's relationship and like how they're best friends and how they're polar opposites, but how Lucas can always rely on Spielberg to like help him and like just like be a sounding board and be there. And Spielberg being on set is super cool. And then him coming back and directing the animatics for the Revenge of the Sith duel is super cool because he wanted to learn, and Lucas was like, "Well, he just came in and learned on the job, right?" And
Yeah,
so
just come in and try it.
So again, you're right, Brandon Medley. Like Spielberg is seeing the battle droids, and Lucas trying to explain everything. He's like, "It's like War and Peace. Like it's thousands on both sides, and Jedi can just cut them down like butter." The entire thing, like you're saying. The beginning is every single scene. It's been memed into oblivion at this point because every single scene is just like gold. It's just like solid gold. And that is probably one of my favorites. It's like sunset. Absolutely. It's beautiful. And you're like, wow, like what if you were there? What if you were just like right there with them? And George is showing off like a big statue of a battle droid. Really great.
That's right. Well, and Jerry chimes in. Jerry says, I love when Spielberg tries to put the battle droid's arm on upside down.
I love it. It kind of breaks it. You're like, okay, like you can get mad at Steven Spielberg, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, now what's going to happen is, again,
now what are we going to do?
The beginning, directing the Jedi, go to bed. It's going to be really great.
That's
I really can't wait for this night
totally in. All right, a couple more real quick. One more from Brandon. Mick Garris operating R2 at the Oscars in '78.
Yes, Mick Garris. So in my previous life, I did the marketing for Fangoria, the horror magazine. I was able to meet Mick Garris because I produced his podcast, or I helped bring his podcast to the Fangoria Podcast Network. And I was able to talk to him briefly at one of our film festivals, and we were talking. And I was like, "Hey, like I know that you're like an accomplished director and whatever, but I do know that your first job in Hollywood really." Was as a production assistant in the Star Wars office after Star Wars had come out. And so he would help Craig Miller and Charlie Lippincott do stuff, including the Oscars or Sesame Street when R2 and 3PO came to Sesame Street. And so this is an exclusive just to the people listening, the Podcast of the Wills. I have reached out and we are working on getting Mick to come on the show.
Outstanding. Just
to talk about, like, he's done so much and he's so accomplished. And not only just like with directing, but also just like his behind the scenes work and his marketing campaigns, everything that he's done for like the fandom in general. But I was like, listen, all I want is 10 minutes. I'm just going to talk about you working for Star Wars in 1978. And
that's right. Just come on. Just please.
So we're working on it, Brandon.
That's awesome.
I would really love that to bring that and record it.
That's fantastic. And we've got another one from my man JD. The behind the scenes from the Sarlacc pit from the Collectible magazine was great behind the movie stuff.
I agree. And I don't know. I mean, because you're in Alabama, right?
Yes.
And Texas, close to Arizona, right? Like it feels relatively close, right?
Approximately.
And actually, one of my clients, because I work in advertising, one of my clients is like opening a location in Yuma or something like that. And I keep like dropping it on calls. I'm like, hey, if you need something like go to the grand opening, let me know. Like, let me know if I can get a flight to Yuma paid for so I can go to the desert. Because people are finding little pieces of latex or whatever in the desert, right? I'm like, this was a piece of the barge. This was a piece of the Sarlacc. Because I would love to just kind of be there and just maybe sweat it out in the Yuma desert for a second.
It would be absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. My gosh, so many good behind the scenes things, so many good moments. One of my favorites, and I think it's only become more of a favorite recently because of our most recent gallery episode for season 2 of Mando, is Ken Nightingale, the pink shorts boom guy.
Oh yeah.
Like, that was growing up, like wherever that picture leaked, wherever we got that eventually, like that was great. Like it was fun. It was hot as hell. They're in Tunisia. He's standing there. He's just in these pink shorts. He's holding that microphone up. But to get gallery this year and to see the guy wearing blue jeans with the pink shorts over it, booming stuff, like it doesn't get better than that. There's a recognition of this is where we came from. This is, it's the tradition of it all, even for the people that are working on it. And I love that. Again, if they called me tomorrow and said, hey, we're doing 10, we want you to be in it, which won't happen, I'm there. But if they called me tomorrow and said, hey, we need somebody to come get coffee for everybody on 10, I'm also there. Like, that's what we want, from Star Wars. That's what I want, to be involved and to be connected to it all. It's so great. It's so fun. So to me, Pink Shorts Guy is always a great classic behind the scenes moment. And then the other one that I think is fun is the classic, faster, more intense. More intense. George's hardcore directing skills. Faster and more intense.
I love it.
Totally crystallized right there. That was a fantastic list. I am so glad you took that challenge on. It was so fun. It has given me plenty of things that as I go through the document that you sent me, I'm going to be watching all those links. I'm going to go through and, like you said, I've got my next, however many nights of watching. Like you, I'm going to pour another whiskey when we get done. I'm going to boot up some YouTube, whatever needs to get me through the night.
Right.
Thank you for doing that. Gosh, that was fun.
Oh, of course, man. No, as you could tell, I had a lot of fun putting it together. So it wasn't like it was like hard, like it wasn't homework, so thank you for inviting me and asking me to do it.
And that was the goal. I want to give my guests this, again, I want to hit them in their sweet spot. I want it to be something that they're into. You talked a little bit, you're working on some things that you've got coming up. Is there anything that you've got coming up immediately you want to plug? Obviously Talking Bay 94. I know that everybody can find you on Twitter at Talking Bay 94. We definitely want to give you plugs, but what else do you have coming up that you can tell us about?
Yeah. Episode wise, nothing to announce currently. There should be there's not a new episode this week, but there should be a week after, just with work stuff. Yeah. We are working on a Lord of the Rings spinoff show that's been hinted at. And so people can figure that out based on my cryptic tweets. So that's in the works. I won't say the name. People can DM me because I'm very proud of the name, though, kind of like Talking 94. So we're working through that. And then again, I can't talk about anything yet, but there's some really cool, more official things coming down the pipeline that I'm really excited about. So I know that was a lot of cryptic and not a lot of plugging, but just follow Talking 94 on Twitter, see the dumb things I'm buying on eBay, follow along, and you will hear. If something exciting happens to me, I'm going to tweet about it. I'm not a very private person when it comes to that. So.
Well, I will say one of my new favorite games recently on Twitter is every time you post something that says, somebody stop me from buying this. Please don't let me buy this. Tell me why I shouldn't buy. And I'm the enabler going, no, you should totally buy that. Like, you need that. Get those things.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just here to help.
I'm working hard. Again, what I will say, and I've said this before, people are hearing it again. When I post that, this is a secret, not that much of a secret, a little bit secret. When I post, don't let me buy this. I'm probably not going to buy it. Really, I'm trying to get you to convince me to buy it because if I'm posting it, it's alerting all these sharks.
That's right.
That this exists.
That's
and
right.
My eBay searches are very curated, saved searches, and so I'm taking it very seriously. And so I don't need any competition. Let me say that.
That's right.
So if I tweet it, I'm probably not trying to get it. The one exception, I've said this again, the one exception, there was an Indiana Jones MGM Studios stunt show, felt pennant. And I tweeted about it. It's like, oh, look at this, only buy this. And I had already put in an offer for it. And then someone just went in and bought it, buy it now price. I was like, that's great. So I'll never do that again. I learned my lesson. Anyway, that's that story.
I feel you. As a husband with a wife and 4 girls and lots of other responsibilities, my eBay searches are also very specific. It's weird Star Wars, vintage Star Wars, ceramic Star Wars, but I'm also super patient. And that's my secret is yeah, I'd love to have that thing for $150, but if I don't have $150, I'm just going to keep watching. I'm going to keep searching. I'm going to wait for that one person that's got make an offer up. And so my new favorite game is what's the coolest thing I can get for super cheap? Or
I mean, that's why I tell everyone too, because people are like, what should I get? What should I buy? Buy what's in your budget, but also what I find the most joy, like you're saying, is finding that great deal or finding that thing that I've loved and I can't. Like you brought up earlier, the Star Tours posters, right? Mm-hmm. And I found one. I found the Yavin tour poster, right? They did different planets. Yeah. So I got the Yavin one, Ralph McQuarrie art. Got it for $10, original. Mm-hmm. No one was looking for it, and I found it. Right, that's probably $100 poster at this point. I was like, great. I feel good about it. Didn't spend $100. And so things like that almost make it even more special or more worth it, the work that you're putting into actually finding it. As opposed to, it's a lot easier to be like, yes, here's $200. Just buy
everything you want.
Take whatever, right? So
yeah.
Obviously by your background, you're very specific of what you collect as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so important, is to be like, okay, here's my niche, here's my specificity, here's what I really enjoy, as opposed to kind of keeping up with the Joneses. I know it's pretty tough, like with Black Series or all the hats, whatever it is, which is like, yes, I'll buy everything. But by being specific with what you actually love about Star Wars or about collecting or about whatever it is, A, you keep your budgets in line, but B, you end up with a collection that is representative of you, which I think is the most important part of all of this, right? Like, who cares about what it's
absolutely it. Yeah. Black Series are cool, but I don't collect Black Series. So there's no reason for me to chase those all down. If I'm an R2 guy, so if there's an R2, like I'm going to get the R2. But other than that, I don't need it. But I love vintage. I love, original stuff. I love, of course, the vintage toys are great. But even like the other collectibles, the curtains I got not too long ago, I got the Empire Strikes Back, a set of the curtains. My recent favorite value find is the Sigma. I'm going to see if I can get it to focus.
Oh my gosh. That's one of my eBay searches is Sigma Star Wars.
It's the Leia mug. I got this, including shipping, less than $10.
I love it. Because they're super cool. I love that because they're super cool. And they're super cheap. Sigma Star Wars, if anyone's still watching, Sigma Star Wars is such an underrated part of vintage collecting. I love that you got it because I'm super into it right now because A, it's super cheap. They all were probably Return of the Jedi era, I believe, is when they started getting licensed. Some really weird stuff, some really cool looking stuff. They have all the ceramic like statues, which there's one right now, and I'm not going to buy it, so that's why I'm saying it out loud. There's one right now that's like, I think there's like 10 of them, and you can get pretty much the complete set of like the actual statues for like, I think it's like $250 or best offer. And so it's like, they look super cool. They all come the original packaging. They would look great all displayed together. And then there's the weird stuff like the C-3PO tape dispenser, all that stuff. It's all Sigma. Anyway, so yes, I love Sigma. I'm trying to figure out what the best way for me to get into it is. I'm about to move, so I'm trying to buy any breakable things right now.
Totally legit.
So, but I'm so glad you got that mug because that's freaking cool. That's freaking cool.
It's great. Well, the one that's haunting me right now, and I know if you have ever seen the Holochronicles podcast, Andy and Josh and those guys, there is a weird, I think it's mostly listed as like a folk art Yoda statue, and it has little jewels around the neck, and it has a light inside of it, and it's clearly not licensed.
Yeah, right.
It's weird.
There's a Darth Vader as well. And Chewbacca, I think. Yeah.
And it's so weird. And that's why I love it, is because of how weird it is. And like Andy has one and Josh has one. And I think Ro has one. Like there's a little group of guys, and I'm like, I need one of those. But they range on eBay from like 150 to like $250. And I missed out. One of them got away a month or two ago for like $65. And I'm like, how did but like it's kind of the white whale of weird Star Wars, whatever. So everybody has a weird eBay search, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. Totally fine. We're all here to form a support group. Brandon, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you for taking the time to hang out. I really appreciate it. I want to encourage all of our listeners, all of our viewers, check out Talking Bay 94 if you haven't. You're totally missing out. Go back to the beginning. There are so many great interviews. A lot of them are not super long, which I think is awesome because it's easy to binge if you're, like you said, working, doing stuff around the house, listening. So many great stories, so many great, people to connect with. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of this. And hopefully we can get you back again some other time. We'll come up with some other crazy list.
I'll make a crazy list. It'll be great.
We're all about some crazy lists. Well, to all of our listeners, to everybody, thank you for joining us on a Sunday night. Come follow us on Twitter. We are at WillsPod. Follow us join our YouTube page, follow our YouTube page. I don't know what we do with YouTube pages, but subscribe to the YouTube page, engage the bell, as David likes to say. Follow us, know when we're coming on. We're on Sunday nights at 8:30. And we love Twitter. We love interacting on Twitter. Get plugged in, share us with your friends. The audio feed will be up tomorrow. If you're listening now, it doesn't matter. I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you for joining us, and may the force be with you always.